This is an overview guide on part wear on specific relevant parts in the Beyblade X meta as of 2026. Do keep in mind that all of my thoughts are just my opinions and my personal experiences. To give context, I am currently one of the top players in my state, so I would like to think that I have a little more knowledge on some of these parts, but obviously because Beyblade is a game of chance at the end of the day, none of these opinions are concrete. So simply just take this video as a reference slash a suggestion rather than the full-on Bible. I'll be going over mainly first the blades of Beyblade X. I'll briefly be going over ratchets, and finally I'll be going over bits in this video. I will put timestamps for very specific parts that anyone is interested in the description. So first we'll be going over Phoenix Swing, but before we do that, to give you a general idea of like blade wear in general, this may seem common sense, but I feel like some people would appreciate this explanation. The more you use a blade, naturally, the more it'll kind of get smushed in. I think Phoenix Swing is a very good example because as you can see, all these spikes are being like smushed in the more and more you use it, just from the sheer amount of contact and high RPMs this thing is going at and just bashing into other opponents. And to give reference, this is a slightly newer Phoenix, so the paint kind of gives it is a little worn, but you can see the spikes are a little more pronounced here compared to this one, which is kind of my beater at the moment. So yeah, as you can see, the spikes are getting slanted right here, and because of this, it may not have as much self-recoil because of the wear. However, the downside is not gonna punch as hard against Wizard Rod or Cobalt Dragoon because the contact points aren't as sharp anymore. Everything in Beyblade X, to give for the whole video, everything in Beyblade X, it has a finite amount of uses you can use. Once you get to that point where it's super worn like this, pretty soon it's something like this is gonna happen where it's just gonna snap off. Phoenix doesn't really have like a specific part that snaps off, it just kind of happens. And as you can see, the blades here, I think once these blades really get smushed in, that's usually a sign you should be looking for a replacement. Now, another great example would be Hover Wyvern. This thing is notorious for having probably the best upper attack in the game for a long ass time. I still think it does, actually, matter of fact. And this is a unused Hover Wyvern. You see like the top blades right here are they look correct. They're very slanted, as you can see, landing at those devastating hits. And this is a used one. And as you can see right away, these points, since they make so much contact, they're starting to slant this way, causing it to not have as much recoil or good upper, unfortunately. And because of this, I would probably not use this in a competitive setting, unfortunately. Hover Wyvern already is a pretty light blade, and if yours is like a lot more worn than this, I would not recommend playing it in a competitive setting. And which is unfortunate because this is a pretty annoying blade to get, which is why I personally don't play it that much, just due to the fact that these blades wear down, and you have to either buy some big ass set that I don't really like because I hate having like useless stadiums, or you have to purchase like a really scalped Takara Tomy Hover Wyvern, which at that point you might as well just get the green one. So yeah, not really a fan of this blade personally, but yeah, this if you're a Hover Wyvern player, do keep in mind these parts will wear down, and if you're wondering why it's not having as much upper, this is probably why. So now we have Wizard Rod, and unlike Phoenix Swing and Hover Wyvern, The opposite applies to Wizard Rod, as if you use a brand new Wizard Rod, it's gonna be more likely to get knocked out and KO'd, because as you can see, the blades are a lot more pronounced compared to a worn one. And you don't want that for stamina, because your whole goal is to outspin the opponent, not KO it, right? And because of these contact points, you're also giving more opportunity to get knocked out yourself, because you have more recoil thanks to these blades. So if you buy a new Wizard Rod, I recommend breaking it in first with like testing by yourself or other people, just to do a little bit. And once you wear it down to this point, this is more ideal. As you can see, the blades are more smushed in. There's not as much, is more round, which you want that for stamina / defense. And yeah, as you can see, this thing is much more used. I've used this in tournaments. I won 2 majors with this. So you definitely want this. You definitely want to wear your Wizard Rod down a little bit. Do keep in mind, however, that once you get to this point here, you need to be aware of how worn it is, such as this Wizard Rod. Once it gets to this point where the blades are very smushed in and it's extremely rounded off, I would recommend getting a spare Wizard Rod. As you can see, this one is cracked right here, and unfortunately Wizard Rod is notorious for breaking, just due to the fact that Takara Tomy never really gave this in mold update, and these the metal portion is actually pretty thin on some parts, like right here. I would definitely recommend stocking up on at least 2 Wizard Rods, so that way you can have a spare in case one breaks. And yeah, same here. And this one's even more broken because there's 2 cracks here. I think another symptom of Wizard Rod being close to breakage is if the blade itself is very off balanced. If you balance tune it, but it's starting to wobble a bit, that could be a symptom that it's getting close to snapping, just due to the wear and tear. So keep that in mind. Meteor Dragoon is an interesting case, as you actually want it worn if you're looking to equalize with the opponent. As you can see, this is an unused Meteor, and this is my worn one for reference. So as you can see with the new one, the rubber is very like stiff. It is there's no paint chips, and this doesn't even feel like rubber. It feels like plastic. But you have to, with this worn one, as you can see, a lot of the rubber is like peeled off, which gives it more grip against other opponents. And you can see this, I think a big symptom would be probably the paint chipping along with this big blade, because if you compare the 2 right here, you'll notice this one's a lot bigger here, especially this point, compared to this one where it's pretty much all gone. This is all smoothed out. And you want this. Not only will this give you less self recoil from this blade, like I said, you'll be more grip. You'll have more grip against the opponent, and be able to get some cheesy outspins, especially against attack types. And that is Meteor Dragoon. I will say you don't want this if you're looking for KOs. You probably shouldn't wear this down as much. Like, you still want to have like the good points of contact for just to KO your opponents. So do keep that in mind. But also do not sandpaper your Meteor Dragoon. That is illegal. Not that people would know, but just to be safe, just play with it. Honestly, I don't think it takes as long to wear this down as people think. So yeah, just don't cheat. So Shark Scale is by far the most popular blade in competitive Beyblade, as it's pretty much good at everything. It has great stamina, great upper attack, great smash attack. It can do pretty much whatever you want in your deck. And I will differentiate the different stages of wear. So right here is a fresher shark scale. I've only used this in 2 or 3 tournaments, and as you can see, I think a big takeaway with how worn it is, you have to look at the middle blades right here. So as you can see, the blades are still pretty jagged and slanted right here. That's usually a good sign that I haven't really used this that much in the grand scheme of things. So because of this, even if it doesn't hit the main contact point right here, because the blades are still pretty jagged, it can still land some pretty big KOs even if it doesn't hit the main point of contact. And you want that if you're playing Shark on attack setups specifically. And this is my more worn one. As you can see, the blades are starting to get smushed in, like right here, as you can see. And I think another key sign to tell how worn it is, you have to look at the back fins right here. Like the more you use it, you'll notice these top fins will start being smushed inwards right here. And because of that, unfortunately, your Shark's slowly going to have less and less smash attack. And eventually, the more you use it, the more it'll end up like my oldest Shark scale right here. Now this one, if you compare it to the freshest one, like, yeah, you can see a pretty big difference. Like this one is there's clearly like a lot of slants and stuff. Right here, this is all smoothed out. Like these top blades right here are all smushed in, which if you're looking for attack with Shark, this is unfortunately nerfed. However, because it's more smoothed out like this, that actually means that you could play this on 960 free ball, for example, or any stamina setup. So you could play this on free ball, low orb. Some people play Hexa, and it's still a very top tier Beyblade. It'll just have a different role. But if you only have one Shark scale, obviously this doesn't really matter, because Shark scale is still Shark scale at the end of the day. But if you're trying to min-max and optimize your Shark scale, if it gets to this point right here, I would at least consider playing free ball or low orb on this, just so that you can take advantage of the smoothness of this worn Shark scale and get attack is definitely nerfed on this. So just something to keep in mind. But yeah, Shark scale is definitely a blade that you can at least get a lot of use out of, even if it's worn like here. Unlike Phoenix Wing and Hover Wyvern, you can at least still play this on a different play style and still get results. Now, Aero Pegasus is a very expensive Beyblade, so this will definitely be a valuable portion. So I only have 2. This is a red one I got, and this was my original blue one. And as you can see, the blue one is actually cracked right there. You see that little line? Yeah, that's a crack. And honestly, I think besides cracking, Aero Pegasus doesn't really have much breakage issues. Honestly, I think it actually does better when the blades are worn in, because I feel like when it's fresh out of the box, especially the bottom half of it actually has a lot of self recoil. So you probably should wear this down before playing it more seriously. Yeah, it's a pretty solid blade, all things considered. With how expensive it is, I'm honestly impressed how durable and how long you can use it for in a competitive setting. Because I used this blue one. This was the mold one, and I used it for a full year before it cracked. And I was using this pretty heavily, as you can see. And yeah, so honestly, if you make a one-time purchase of Aero Pegasus, I would definitely expect to at least get a full year out of it, especially with the red one, as the mold is updated. So yeah, I'd say you shouldn't worry about wear too much. Just be sure to watch for the blade, the metal here on the thin parts, and be sure they don't crack like here. Now this is a bit of an unorthodox pick, especially in my region. but I know in certain regions, especially ones that play first to 4, Clock Mirage is actually a very popular pick. And unfortunately, as much as I like the design, I am not a fan of how they implemented the Ratchet, because unfortunately, due to how often this thing bursts, the tabs here actually wear down. I actually have a video of someone from my community who wore their Clock Mirage so much, the simple Ratchet doesn't even click in. It's that bad. So if you're gonna be playing Clock Mirage seriously, I highly recommend you buy multiples of this, at least 2 or 3, just due to how poorly designed this locking system is. Because even mine, like, it kind of clicks, but like, at least this blue one for me is super loose. Like, it always pops. I know some people's Clock Mirages are really good at not bursting, but for some reason this one, mine just pops pretty easily. And yeah, as you can see here, these points unfortunately seem to wear down. And yeah, it's just, I don't think it's a very good designed blade in terms of durability, and which is a shame because you can only put simple ratchets on this. So yeah, mainly look at the bottom, pay attention to it. If it feels loose, you probably need a new one for competitive play anyways. So yeah, definitely look out for that. Now this portion will be solely for CX, as CX is a more niche system. I will only be limiting this to Pegasus Blast, as it is the most popular CX blade at the moment in competitive. And I'll only be limiting this portion to wheel and heavy. However, this section will apply to pretty much every other CX part. Now, CX as a system, the one thing it gets right is fixing the breakage issue with stuff with BX and UX. I don't think I've ever seen a CX blade or part full on snap or crack or any of that sort, just due to the fact that half the blade is flipping plastic. But a win's a win. But the parts are by no means immune to wear, and Blast is no exception. As you can see, because of Blast's shape, the blades actually smush downwards like this, and because of that, whatever assist blade you're putting on, it actually digs into the assist blade, which is not really my cup of tea. And as you can see, there's like indents from the Blast blade just on my assist blade right here, and which is kind of a shame because yeah, it's just kind of annoying. It just doesn't look pretty. I don't think it affects it performance wise that much, but it is something to note. And obviously, because the assist blades are all plastic, they will wear down and they will smooth out, so they won't have as much attack power the more you use them. I think heavy is pretty apparent with this, and wheel is not as, it doesn't look good, but what was it? The wear on wheel is pretty solid. It's honestly, I don't really think it makes much of a difference. However, the tabs here on wheel, they do tend to get stress marks here, so do keep that in mind as well. But I would say CX in general, besides those minor things, is honestly a really good system in terms of wear. The only thing is blades like Pegasus Blast, unfortunately, they do slope downwards, which will affect its attack power against stuff like Wizard Rod. So do keep that in mind before playing it. Now we have the most notorious bay for breaking, which is Bullet Griffon. I'll be quick with this because everyone already explained it, but yeah, these tabs are all plastic and they will make contact. They absolutely will. There is no avoiding it. And this hasn't broken yet, but as you can see, there's pretty gnarly stress marks. And the main bullet honestly isn't that bad for breaking. As long as it doesn't make contact here, I think it should be fine. But yeah, the main Griffon part is pretty notorious for breakage. I would definitely only recommend this to people who really like this blade, which is understandable. But besides that, I would not recommend playing this. Unless you have a spare, yeah, just avoid this. So one more important detail that I forgot to mention about blades is that there was actually a universal mold update with all the blades in Beyblade X, starting with Mold 1 Phoenix Wing, after with Unicorn Sting. You'll notice that if you have any older blades from Takara Tomy, such as Drawn Sword, you will notice that these tabs here are more square compared to this Hasbro Phoenix Wing I have. You'll see that tabs are more curved. And pretty much after Phoenix Wing for Takara Tomy and all of the Hasbro releases, they all have this mold update. And the reason for that is the early design for the tabs here tended to snap off just due to how square they were. And because of that, especially from high recoil, these could get stress marks and eventually snap off. I will post a picture of a Cobalt Drake right now. Unfortunately, Blue Cobalt Drake suffers this the most, and because it's the heaviest mold of that blade, if you do play Cobalt Drake, you have to be very careful about that and be very mindful, because yeah, these tabs here, they will get stress marks. I did own a copy of Cobalt Drake, and those I eventually sold it off because these tabs were getting stress marks, and I spent a lot of money on it, so it was kind of a bummer to see that happen. So I wouldn't really recommend using Mold 1 Beyblade X blades in general because of this. Thankfully, pretty much every single blade besides Blue Cobalt Drake got the mold updates with these tabs, so you don't really need to worry about that these days. Just be very mindful of that, and if you do have a Mold 1 blade, always pay attention to the tabs here. So the takeaway for the blades portion is that if you're a stamina / defense build, you want to be a little more worn to not have so much recoil. If you're an attack build, you want to have more fresh copy just to have more explosive hits to knock out your opponent. And if you're a little bit in between, you probably should break it in a little bit, but still have enough, still not be too worn to the point where your attacks are kind of like sponges. And Shark Scale can be either or. It can either be like Phoenix, where it just has explosive hits if it's a new copy, or it could be a more used copy like this one, and be more like Wizard Rod as a secondary stamina blade. And pretty much everything kind of falls between this, or this in terms of the spectrum of blade wear. So Ratchet Wear is not as noticeable compared to a blade or a bit. However, you should always be very, very aware of how tight your ratchet is after heavy use, because unfortunately the inner tabs within the ratchet can break, especially if it's a part you heavily use. And because of that, I highly recommend a tri-wing screwdriver, just so you can swap out and fix ratchets and be able to save a little money, especially with that, because I know certain ratchets like 150 are locked behind a very specific release, and if you're a budget player, definitely save money and get a tri-wing. The only ratchet I would say that actually matters how worn it is would be the one ratchets right here. And the main reason, of course, is because of pocket hopping. So what that means, for those who are unaware, pocket hopping means if you land in the the side pockets, because of how much the one ratchet sticks out, you actually have a decent chance of actually hopping out and saving points. Even if you get outspun, it's still a win because you're saving 1 point against your opponent. And honestly, the one ratchet surprisingly has really good stamina as well, because it offsets a lot of imbalances, because a lot of blades in X are naturally unbalanced. So the one ratchets are really good at offsetting the imbalance, helping you balance tune, especially most notoriously Wizard Rod on Hexa. And because of this, the one ratchet is very useful. But the more you use the one ratchets, as you can see, the more worn it'll get. And you'll notice, compared to a brand new one, this point is not as pronounced. Because of that, you will not get as much pocket hops as you want. So you'll be essentially costing yourself more points if you're using a beat up one. And honestly, I think one is the most annoying part in Beyblade X because of how fast this shit wears out. You have to buy, if you want to be consistent at pocket hopping, you would have to buy a lot of one ratchets, which is also why I recommend a tri-wing screw to save a little money, because you'll have more useless ratchets like 980. I know 980s has niche uses, but 160 in general has the most flexible use out of the ones. And because of that, you probably should at least have 2 one ratchets, one for tournament use and one for casual play. And definitely use your more beat up one for casual play as well. So overall with ratchets, I would just say just be mindful of like the internals with it, and be sure to check if like these tabs right here are intact. So if they aren't, you need to replace the frame itself. And if there's anything wrong with the internals, you also need to replace it. And the only one you have to worry about the outer wear would be one, just so you can get those pocket hops. This one's a horrible one, so I would not play this. Definitely run something like this for your tournaments instead. But yeah, ratchets, I wouldn't really worry about wear on ratchets as much. Just play whatever is tight on your Beyblade, and just stick with that. Now, the whole reason I made this video was because of Hexa, the bit. Now, Hexa is a top tier bit. I believe it is the best bit for Wizard Rod, hands down. However, I think people are not understanding when to replace their Hexas, because when Hexa is worn, it is garbage in my opinion, because the one upside is, I will mention this later, the one upside is that when it's worn, it's a little easier to perform launch tech such as rail stalls. However, that doesn't really matter if you're gonna be more erratic on the rails and self KO, because of the general nature of Wizard Rod combos. You're gonna be making a lot of contact with attack blades in general, and if you get hit into the rail while you have high RPMs, you're gonna self KO. Unfortunately, I'll literally post a video right now of that happening, and this is just because of the fact that Hexa has 16 gears, so that's his main weakness for sure. Just if you get knocked into rails, you're just gonna die. And even if you don't self KO, if it's worn, you'll be going on that rail a lot of times and you'll just lose so much spin. So to a point where sometimes stuff like Aero Pegasus or even Phoenix Wing, can outspin it. I literally outspun people with a Phoenix Wing rush against Wizard Rod just because the fact that their Hexa is too worn and they should have replaced it. I would definitely suggest replacing it. If you see multiple teeth have like this, I'll zoom in here. They have this like, if you see like the gears is getting smushed in like that, I definitely would suggest replacing it, especially if you're noticing it's self KO or move more erratically on the rails. This is an orange one. I believe this one's also wearing a little. It's not as noticeable, but I definitely notice it when I'm playing with it in tournaments, which is why I replace it. I would say despite a more fresh copy having a little more tilt from the tip, it is more safe, I would say. I would just suggest maybe just wearing down the tip a little bit, and just breaking it in, getting a few launches with a fresh copy. But I would say in general, I definitely feel more safe running a fresh copy of Hexa versus a worn one, which is why I recommend at least 2 copies of Hexa if you are gonna play it. It is by far the best bit for Wizard Rod in my opinion, just from how many good matchups you can get with it, or how many winnable matchups you can get with it. You just have to be very mindful of the condition. Now, admittedly, I do not have as much experience playing these parts as they do not fit my playstyle. However, I will try my best to elaborate on the wear on the ball bits specifically. I would say they're very similar to Hexa in general. They're not as obnoxious just due to the fact they have the standard gear ratio, but especially with ball and low orb especially, I do notice that they can chip, the gears can chip off, and once they do extreme dashes because of that, they're more erratic and they lose a lot more stamina and stability. So I'm not really a fan of that, which is also part of the reason I don't really play these as much. And the only exception to these are free ball, which is probably why it's my favorite, just due to the fact that it's free spinning. It actually helps it avoid some of the downsides Hexa, ball, and low orb have with that. At least me personally. Feel free to let me know in the comments, but yeah, I think the free spin part of free ball really saves it from some of the downsides. So I wouldn't really worry about bit wear as much with this, because in my experience, I don't really see it as much because of that, because of the free spin. So yeah, I would only worry about these 2, but honestly, if you only have, I think free ball is a really good budget pick as well. So for the 10 gears such as rush and low rush, your main worry for these will be the gears, especially just due to how little gears there are on these, especially if you do a lot of launch tech with the rail stalling, like me, you will wear these down a lot. And unfortunately, this is just the reality of the rush bits in general, just due to how often they make contact with the rails. You will wear down your parts like this. I would say that when they get smushed in like this to this point, it will still be playable for sure, but your movements are gonna be a little more erratic / unpredictable. So if you're not looking for that in a tournament run, I highly suggest getting a replacement such as this. And once it gets past that point, the gears will just snap off like this, unfortunately. So if you're gonna heavily be playing rush, I highly recommend at least 2 copies. And the same applies to low rush as well. Unfortunately, this one is my fresh one, and right here is one of my broken ones here. As you can see, this snapped off right here, and 2 of the teeth just tore off. This was beforehand, it was similar to this rush where a lot of the gears were just kind of smushing inwards like that. So the movement was erratic regardless. But yeah, I would also say that the plate snapping off like this is pretty rare. I've only had this happen to low rush specifically, probably just due to the fact that it has these little like cutouts here. Unfortunately, the 10 gears are pretty notorious for breakage. I would say wedge and probably narrow are not gonna be as bad with this, just due to the fact that they don't really make as much contact with the rails, just because they're stamina and defense bits. But rush especially has a problem with this, so do keep that in mind for playing these very popular parts. Kick is another very popular bit in general, just due to the fact of it has a very good mix of defense and aggression, just due to how easy it is to do launch tech such as rail stalls on either side. And I will say this is one of the few bits where it's actually okay for it to be a little worn, just due to the fact that the one thing about bit wear on the gears is that it can be a little easier to land the rail stalls depending on the type of bit, and kick falls into this category where worn actually does do pretty well at stalling compared to a fresher one like this. The only downside with that, in my experience with kick, is that if it's more worn and the gears are more like warped in, it's kind of hard to see on this one because it's white. But I do find that when it does extreme dashes late game, it's a little more erratic compared to this. I think that's the general trend overall with bits in general. If the gears are more worn and smushed in, they will be more unpredictable / erratic when they do extreme dashes on the rail, but they will be a little easier to do launch tech with, so it's a trade-off for sure. Another popular bit is level. This is mainly played on Dragoon combos, and similar to kick, it's not the end of the world when the gears are a little worn. I would say it actually, if anything, it actually helps it do launch tech / rail stalls. And level especially, you never want to flat launch this anyways, just due to how easy it is to self KO and how wild it can get. So honestly, the gears being a little worn isn't the end of the world. Just be very, very careful when launching it, as when the gears are a little worn, it can be a little more erratic once it does extreme dashes. But besides that, I would say it's a very good budget part if you're on a strict budget. So definitely look into this part if that intrigues you. So rubber bits are not very common in X. There are only two at the moment, being Rubber XL and Mirage. And because they're rubber, these bits, the actual tips themselves will actually wear down a lot faster compared to a standard bit. And you don't really need to worry about gear wear on these as much as a normal bit, just due to the fact that the rubber gives it a lot of grip anyways, and it kind of makes the extreme dashes really weird. So I wouldn't stress about the gears themselves. What you gotta stress about would be the actual tip itself. Now, according to at least WBO rules, as long as for Merge, as long as this point here is still present, if you can focus, yeah, there. As long as the spike there is still present, whatever happens to it should be fine. Once this point wears down completely to where it's basically a rubber flat, that's when it's probably not legal for play. And Rubber XL is a really weird case. It really depends on your TO, but the general rule for Rubber XL is as long as the tip itself is flat, it's still a flat tip where it acts like an attack type, it's still legal. But when it's like rounded off, we'll post a picture right now. When it's rounded off to where it looks like a rubber ball, that's when it's deemed illegal at least by WBO. I'm not sure how official events rule this, but like I said, if you're playing in just fan run events, I would ask your TO if you're not sure. But generally, if it's still like a flat tip and it's very aggressive, I'd say it's pretty safe to assume it's legal. But like I said, I would always ask your TO first before making that assumption. The final bit I'm gonna go over in this video will be Elevate. Now Elevate's a very strange bit compared to the others, as you know, because it's really wide. It has really good life after death. However, when it does an extreme dash, it kind of like lifts up. That's kind of like the gimmick, I guess. But yeah, it has the gears are very pronounced because of that. And I don't really have any I never really had any issues with wear on the actual tip itself, just due to how flat it is. But the gears, I would say, especially if you use it a lot, they will wear down a lot. And because of that, I would definitely recommend just using a fresher one for big tournaments, just due to the fact that when the gears wear, you know, as mentioned before with Hexa, once the gears start to wear down, it kind of moves very erratically on the rails if it catches on. And in a perfect world, you know, if you have the right launch tech, you can avoid that. But in a game of luck, such as Beyblade, you sometimes can't avoid it. So yeah, Elevate unfortunately seems to suffer from the wear and tear, especially with how pronounced the gears are. This is a slightly better one, but there's like hair on it. I don't know where that came from, but Elevate in general, I would say I would definitely recommend just having spare. And yeah, especially the teal one, I would definitely recommend not using that as your beater. So definitely just stick to the purple ones for just casual / local testing, and save the better ones for bigger events. So overall, with bitwear, your biggest concern should just be the gears themselves rather than the tips, unless you launch them on concrete, of course. But yeah, I would say the main bits you shouldn't be as worried about with bitwear would probably just be kick, level, free ball, just from how the free spin kind of cushions some of the wear on it, and probably merge as well. But these other ones, I would say, especially Rubber XL mainly for the tip, but everything else, I would say, do keep in mind the bit wear, and keep spares of keep spares with fresh gears, so you won't really suffer as much with self-extreming or losing stamina on the rails as much. So I hope this mediocre guide helped you understand at least some popular parts and what to look for when you're worrying about wear and tear. Do keep in mind with the worn portions, some TOs and especially official events can deem your parts not legal due to how worn it is. I think one example I heard back then with the Hasbro events is that a lot of wizard rods were deemed not legal just due to how worn they are. So do keep that in mind before especially going to official events. Obviously, what's legal and what's not really depends on your region and your TOs as well. If you're unsure, always ask your local tournament organizer about anything you have and whether it's legal or not. I hope this mediocre guide helped you understand what to look for and how to get the most bang for your buck out of your parts. And I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.